From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The Bolivarian armed forces in Venezuela have once again reaffirmed their loyalty to the government of President Nicolás Maduro. President Maduro joined an early morning activity with the top leaders of the army and thousands of soldiers. They shouted, "Loyal always, traitors never." Maduro spoke before dawn as the troops prepared for their tasks.
We are fighting against traitors and promoters of coups to defend our dignity, our honor, our right to be a republic, and our identity. It's a historic fight, and the Bolivarian armed forces must show its unity and discipline, following the Constitution and our values. We must show the world that we are a peace force, respecting the Constitution, and every day more socialist and anti-imperialist.
Minister of Defense Vladimir Padrino Lopez also expressed his loyalty to the president.
We are here to ratify our loyalty to the homeland, to the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Our commander taught us how to defend our country and to be loyal to our people and our commander-in-chief. Loyalty to the democratic institutions and to all Venezuelans.
And soldiers also showed their support for the Bolivarian government. The Venezuelan Supreme Court has ordered the arrest of opposition figure Leopoldo Lopez after he participated in the attempted coup. The court said it ordered the arrest because he violated the terms of his house arrest. The court also ordered he complete his sentence of 13 years, of which he's already served 5 years and 2 months. In 2015, Lopez was found guilty of inciting violence during the 2014 opposition protests. And following the announcement, Lopez spoke to the media in front of the Spanish Embassy in Caracas. He defended his escape from house arrest and said this week's events are part of a larger plan to take power in Venezuela. On Wednesday, the streets of Caracas were turned into a sea of red as thousands celebrated International Workers' Day. The massive crowds also marched in support of the Bolivarian Revolution, President Nicolás Maduro, and national sovereignty in the face of intensified U.S.-backed aggression. And just one day removed from the failed coup led by Juan Guaidó.
Social movements and political groups stood strongly in defense of the Bolivarian Revolution and all it represents. They were joined by members of the labor movement, many of whom have seen 20 years of the Bolivarian Revolution. Their support for the revolution is unswerving, in spite of the hardships caused by U.S. sanctions and an international siege.
The revolution is about the protection of the social security. It also recognizes the relevance and significance of the working class in the struggle. These concerns have created a labor law that today turns 7 years old. That's 7 years with the objective of benefiting the working class. We, as lawmakers and working class, have the duty to make the law work.
A day after the attempted coup, the Chavismo condemned the violence perpetrated by the opposition in its bid to destabilize the country.
It looks like the plan proposed by Juan Guaidó was an attempt to set Leopoldo Lopez free so they could fulfill with their plans to destabilize the country. The Venezuelan people have said once again that they will not come back. They will not come forward. People are protecting Miraflores Palace.
Venezuelans say neither the U.S. economic sanctions nor the threat of a coup can deter the revolutionary will of the people, inspired by the legacy of Simón Bolívar.
The Venezuelan middle class was desperate and attacked our country, our people, in a really violent way, with war weapons and traitor officials from the armed forces, with the imperialism leading the coup attempt. However, our people's answer was rapid. The same day that happened, our people took the streets to answer them, and we all went to the Miraflores Palace.
After yet another failed power grab by Guaido, opposition supporters also took to the streets of Caracas.
Calle sostenida.
The people in the streets are constant, they are strong, and have a leadership. These people go towards the national strike that the workers proposed. We are going to talk also with the military and with the international community.
Meanwhile, the government has ordered an investigation into what it says are constant illegal and interventionist actions by Washington against Venezuelan democracy.
Earlier, we spoke with Abby Martian, host of the Empire Files, to get her take on the events taking place in Venezuela.
Juan Guaido, of course, cosplayed as president for 3 months, gallivanting around the world, subverting international law time and time again. So I guess it's not surprising that they're getting desperate, right? And they're trying to stage several coup attempts, right? And so this is the latest attempt. I was very, very disturbed waking up to seeing that there was a military coup. As we know, that this started as a parliamentary coup attempt. It's kind of manifested into a military coup attempt. That shows you how dramatic the escalations have been. And are going to continue to be. And we should be very, very worried about how dramatic these escalations are getting. When I was there in 2017 on the ground, there were violent armed insurrections being fomented by the protesters. But it is very, very scary to see now soliciting, even though it was just a dozen military personnel, soliciting them to try to stage this violent insurrection, bolstering Juan Guaido, the Trump puppet, and actually shooting at police and GNB soldiers. Now, I think one really disturbing aspect of this is kind of Juan Guaido's media arm. He has the propaganda arm of the entire Western corporate media. I woke up to Twitter moments, basically just parroting what he was saying all over corporate media, essentially acting as his propaganda talking points. And I find that very, very bizarre that, he just has to declare something and you have everyone from the Washington Post to Twitter itself repeating and parroting his propaganda line.
We also asked Martin what she thought about comments made by U.S. officials, including Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton, who said that the Monroe Doctrine is back.
This is really, really disturbing. Again, the U.S. has always considered Latin America its property. Again, the Trump administration kind of says the quiet parts out loud. This is the hideousness of U.S. empire. Trump's cabinet is not afraid to vocalize what the bipartisan foreign policy establishment really believes about Latin America. They believe that Latin America is the U.S. empire's backyard, and they have the right, the preordained right to do whatever they want to quote unquote democratize the region. Trump championed himself as this anti-interventionist, right? But when it comes to our hemisphere, he said it's different. And he picked the most vile war criminals to lead this regime change attempt. And we all know that he's not going to back down. And in fact, he doubles down on some of his worst failures. Now, John Bolton has been extremely brazen about the Monroe Doctrine, his bloodlust for overthrowing democratic leaders, installing a fascist regime. He doesn't mince words about that. He's even begging soldiers to defect, offering to give them amnesty. You have so-called Christian Marco Rubio openly tweeting Gaddafi being lynched in an open death threat to Maduro. And then you have Mike Pompeo actually saying the most bald-faced lies of all. And again, corporate media just printing them as fact. Everything from Hezbollah has active cells in Caracas to, Maduro was going to step down. He was on an airplane tarmac, and then Russia, you got a call from Putin saying, don't step down. So this is kind of a coup by tweet in the most grotesque way possible, where we can really see the heavy hand of empire being played and documented before our eyes.
She also commented on U.S. threats of military intervention and whether they're preparing for that kind of escalation.
John Bolton gave that Troika of Tyranny speech, and I think that really was mapping out what they wanted to do over Trump's first term. I see people laughing, congratulating, themselves, saying the coup is over, what a big failure, kind of laughing at these people. I don't think that's the right approach here. Look, 40,000 Venezuelans have been killed by U.S. sanctions since 2017. That is genocidal. That is criminal. They're crimes against humanity. Can you imagine if Maduro's government had killed 40,000 American civilians? We're in a never-ending war on terror because 3,000 American lives were taken on 9/11. Just fathom. It's unfathomable, right? But we shouldn't be laughing. We shouldn't be scoffing at this, saying, oh, it's over. What a joke. John Bolton is responsible for the deaths of 1 million people. Elliot Abrams is responsible for genocide in Latin America. 40,000 Venezuelan lives are a drop in the bucket to these genocidal warmongers who will stop at nothing to get what they want. I mean, the coup stages have failed because of the sheer resilience of the Venezuelan people, but that does not mean that the U.S. empire is going to forgive or forget their regime change policy, Carla. I mean, again, this goes far beyond the Trump administration. This is a bipartisan foreign policy effort. I just saw Joe Biden supporting the coup attempt, saying we must support the National Assembly and the ouster of Maduro. Elizabeth Warren has been on record saying she supports this coup attempt. I mean, this is a bipartisan effort across the board. And if Biden wins, we're not going to see it stop, is my point. And I think that this is just the first term of the Trump administration where he is going to double down until they enact some sort of regime change effort, which means a possible military intervention. And I think that they are determined to do this. And it's really going to basically stand with the militant efforts of U.S. anti-imperialists, like we're seeing the brave people putting their bodies on the line to protect this embassy in D.C. That's what we're going to need to see happen here. A widespread anti-war movement mobilizing on the ground to put our bodies on the line to stop the U.S. empire from overthrowing yet another democratically elected leader that could have widespread devastating reverberations, not only for Venezuela, but the entire region at large.
And lastly, we asked Abby Martin about the role of activists in the fight against U.S. intervention.
Over this 3-month coup attempt, ongoing coup attempt, 0% of elite media commentators, 0% of corporate media journalists have opposed this U.S. empire regime change policy. But despite that, Carla, we are seeing massive, widespread resistance on the ground. We saw thousands of people come all over the country to oppose the coup attempt in D.C. Hundreds of people here in Los Angeles opposing the coup attempt. I mean, we are opposing the corporate media. We are making our own media. We are not listening to them anymore. And yeah, I think that works for who are reading the New York Times and Washington Post. That propaganda may work for them. But this is the generation of the war on terror. My generation and the people younger than me, we've experienced an ongoing failed war in Iraq. We've experienced the failed war in Afghanistan. We're not poisoned from New York Times propaganda. We understand what's at stake, and we understand the millions of lives that have been taken based on lies from the U.S. government. And you know, we don't want Trump to overthrow another elected government in Venezuela or in Venezuela and Latin America. And we know that it will exacerbate the refugee crisis, cause an untold amount of death and misery. So I have amazing faith in the young generation here to oppose this, to oppose Trump, and again, put our bodies on the line to stop this.
Several activists of the women organization Code Pink have been arrested while inside of the Venezuelan Embassy in Washington. The organization reported the arrest of the organization's director, Ariel Gold, and other activists when they tried to get food, water, and medicine inside the embassy. The activists have been illegally living inside the embassy for 2 weeks at the invitation of the Venezuelan government. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Colombian Constitutional Court will have the final say about 6 objections raised by President Iván Duque to the Special Jurisdiction for Peace law. A majority of senators voted to reject the objections on Tuesday, but the government says it wasn't an absolute majority. The Speaker proposed a second vote, but the opposition walked out. Now the Constitutional Court will have the last word. The lower house of Congress already rejected the objections on April 8th. Our correspondent in Bogotá, Tatiana Portela, explains the standoff in the Senate.
What has been happening today was an appeal by one of the senators, Roy Barreras, of the U Party. You'll remember that on the 30th of April, President Duque's objections to the JP law were put to the vote. 47 senators voted against his objections to this key part of the peace process, and 35 senators voted in favor. However, the government party, the Democratic Center Party, said this was not an absolute majority. On Wednesday and today, there has still been no ruling on whether or not there was an absolute majority against the president's objections. So, on Thursday, the Senator Roy Barreras lodged an appeal against the decision by the government party. The Speaker of the Senate rejected his appeal, but at the same time he called for a revote on the objections. In response to the Speaker, the parties of the opposition and those who have been supporting the peace process walked out of the Congress, leaving it without a quorum. And they demanded that the result of the vote on Tuesday be respected. Now, both the Speaker and the opposition parties have written to the Constitutional Court to ask it to rule on whether that vote, 47 against 35, was in fact an absolute majority. The Congress is also debating the National Development Plan, which of course has been opposed by many members of Congress and by social movements as well, who say it would hurt most of the population. That was one of the main issues in the nationwide strike at the beginning of this week. So we'll be following that and waiting for the Constitutional Court's decision on whether the objections to the JP were rejected or not.
We think that the end for that report. An international meeting for solidarity and peace is underway in Cuba on the day the United States further tightened its blockade against the island. More than 1,000 delegates from various countries are attending the gathering in Havana. On Tuesday, President Donald Trump threatened a total blockade of Cuba, and on Thursday, Washington activated Title III of the Helms-Burton Law, which threatens foreign companies doing business with Cuba.
The main aim of this tightening of the blockade and all of these measures is to suffocate economically our country and destroy the Cuban Revolution. They have announced new measures to strangle us. And although they haven't yet published all the details, these measures are intended to strengthen the blockade by limiting the money sent by Cubans to their families here in Cuba and reducing the trips made by North Americans to our country.
Major changes are coming to the management and oversight of Jamaica's police force amid a burgeoning crime problem. The move also comes after the government declared a new state of public emergency. The government will be ramping up the implementation of anti-corruption activities within the police service. A senior police superintendent is to be put on leave to facilitate investigations into the mobile reserve. St. Lucia has imposed a quarantine on a cruise ship after a case of measles was diagnosed on board. Passengers and crew members are prohibited from leaving the vessel. The ship was reportedly heading next to Dominica. Measles is a highly contagious virus-borne disease that can be easily spread by even one person coughing or sneezing. Measles cases in the U.S. have reached the peak, with more than 700 cases confirmed as of this week.
The Ministry of Health is currently investigating a situation aboard a cruise ship. We got information early this morning through two reputable sources, that there was a confirmed case of measles on board a cruise ship which visited our island. As per the Quarantine Act, our authority under the Quarantine Act, the Public Health Act, and after internal discussions as well as discussions with external health agencies such as the Pan American Health Organization, we thought it prudent that we quarantine the ship.
Trinidad and Tobago's former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan has been arrested on corruption inquiries. Ramlogan was detained at the Piarco International Airport as he attempted to leave the country for legal matters early on Wednesday morning. A warrant was also issued for opposition senator and attorney Gerald Ramdeen by officers carrying out the same investigation. He turned himself in hours after Ramlogan's arrest.
You will understand why such short notice.
Meanwhile, there are reports that the Director of Public Prosecution is seeking a plea deal for a state witness against Ramlogan and Ramdeen. That person, Jamaican Queen's Counsel Vincent Nelson, has appeared in court charged with conspiring with the duo. Nelson is alleged to have financially rewarded Ramlogan for cases in which Nelson represented the state. Sudanese protest leaders have insisted on representatives from armed resistance groups being part of the civilian administration. The alliance is demanding that the military council be replaced by a joint civilian military council. However, they say the number of members is yet to be finalized.
I assure you that even if we agree tomorrow with the military council on our proposal and they fully support it, the transitional ruling institutions will not be formed unless the armed resistance groups are a key part of the setup.
The president of Zimbabwe announced it has set aside land to relocate people displaced by Cyclone Idai and those in areas prone to natural disasters. Emerson Mnangagwa says the government is pooling resources to build houses for those left homeless by the cyclone. He is also scheduled to meet with various chiefs to make sure tradition is followed in moving people to new areas. The Ugandan pop star and opposition member of parliament Bobi Wine has been freed on bail after 2 days in prison. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kawayulangi, was arrested on Monday for organizing a protest against the tax on the use of social media. The magistrate has warned Wine not to engage in unlawful demonstrations or risk being returned to jail.
However, the applicant is bonded at 1 million shillings cash. Its surety is bonded at 10 million shillings, not cash. The applicant is barred from engaging in unlawful demonstrations. In the event that this condition is breached, it shall lead to automatic lapse of his bail.
Municipal workers in the South African city of Durban have gone on strike against what they are calling unfair salary adjustments. The workers are accusing the city mayor of intentionally upgrading the salary of workers belonging to the ruling African National Congress. The workers have vowed not to return to work until their salary is upgraded to the same scale as the party members. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Facebook has permanently banned several figures and organizations from its platforms, including Nation of Islam leader Luis Farrakhan and InfoWars host Alex Jones. The company announced that they were now barred from using Facebook and Instagram under the company's policies against dangerous individuals and organizations. The ban was also issued to fringe right social media personality Laura Lumler and controversial personality Milo Yiannopoulos, among others. Facebook also removed the accounts, fan pages, and groups affiliated with these individuals after it reevaluated the content they had previously posted.
Got more involved and had more access to.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has appeared at a British court for an initial hearing over an extradition request from the U.S. This comes just a day after he was sentenced to 50 weeks in jail for breaching bail. The U.S. Justice Department said Assange was arrested for allegedly conspiring with former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to gain access to hundreds of thousands of military reports about the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. He faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in the U.S. And earlier we were joined by journalist Mohamed El Masi, who was outside the court for the hearing.
About 20 people with press slips went in, and then that was it. So not a single member of the public were allowed in. And the scene became quite hostile, actually, I have to say. I was standing outside for at least 15 minutes after the hearing started, and there was what you might be able to describe as a mob of people, easily 4 to 5 dozen people outside, all shouting a number of things, including shame, the public should be allowed to be inside. Why is not a single member of the public allowed inside, just journalists? Unfortunately, even though I had my press card, I didn't have a press slip, so I wasn't able to get inside either. Outside, far larger groups, and I think you've seen some of the footage there. There's a number of different groups of people who aren't connected to each other, incidentally. There generally are multiple groups of people, all of whom are calling for Assange to be released and demanding that he not be extradited to the United States of what many of them feel are trumped-up charges.
Live recordings of Jamaican reggae legend Bob Marley, which were found by chance after spending 40 years in a London hotel basement, are to be auctioned off. The analog tapes that are the original live recordings of Marley's concerts in London and Paris between 1976 and 1978. They were going to be thrown away, but after a 2-year restoration by a sound engineer, the 10 tapes will be auctioned off as artifacts next month. Marley was a revolutionary voice for social justice and the human rights of the poor.
It's myself as a revolutionary who don't have no help and not take no bribe from no one to fight it single-handed with music. Rasta is the future. See? Yes, Rasta is the future skin.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.